Welcome to 97 Octane Hockey. Today we have a very special guest sitting in with us. He is a former NHL goaltender who played for 6 different teams over 11 seasons, including the New York Islanders, St. Louis Blues, Minnesota Wild, Florida Panthers, New York Rangers, and last and certainly least appealing to Oilers fans, the Calgary Flames. He is also a Bill Masterson Trophy winner, a survivor of bacterial meningitis, and a lover of homemade pasta. He's now an analyst for TSN Radio 1050, NBC Sports, and the NHL Network, where he shares his knowledge and humor with hockey fans across the country and North America. He is none other than Jamie McLennan, also known as Noodles. In 1989 and 90, my weekends usually consisted of driving to Lethbridge with my sister and my mom to watch Jamie play with the Lethbridge Hurricanes when I lived in southern Alberta's Milk River. Jamie, on behalf of my co-hosts, Chad Graham and Bob Schmidt, and myself, Mike Dirsa, welcome to the show, and thank you for being here. How's it going?
I'm not too bad. Thanks for having me. That's quite the intro. I'm pretty excited about that.
You deserve it. I guess one other thing, Jamie, you're probably used to a little bit of this, and I can't do it for too long or we'll get in trouble, but...
The running down a dream, eh?
You betcha.
That was our. We used to come out to that song in Lethbridge. It was kind of neat. That does bring back. Every time I do hear that, like randomly, I do think of like coming out in Lethbridge. You come bombing out of the tunnel there, so that's pretty cool.
Did it? I got to ask you right off the hop. I guess did that drive you nuts because it was like your entrance song. It was like when you scored. It was.
Yeah, it got a bit old, but you know what? Like sometimes there's certain buildings, there's just a song attached to them where it's like, okay, I know. I can't remember. It's called Chelsea Dagger. That song, yeah. Like so they play that in Chicago, and but when you get scored on, I was playing for Calgary one night, and I think I was either backing up or I was the goalie coach, and we had a rough night. It was like a 7 or 8 banger that we gave up. So I remember going to the back of the plane and Mika Kiprusoff leaning up. I just leaned over to him and said, "How's it going?" And he just leaned over and just said, da, 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 da. It was like stuck in his head because he gave up. There was a bunch of goals that went in that night. So there's certain rinks that are attached to a song. Even back in junior, I played against the Kamloops Blazers. They had that "taking care of business" as you skated out. So, sometimes it's just certain songs are attached to the building. So, running down a dream, it was me with the Lethbridge Hurricanes.
So we got a comment. I guess we should keep people, their comments going. Why Noodles?
Noodles is a nickname that came from junior hockey. So I started my career in with the Spokane Chiefs and then got traded to Lethbridge. And we would, back in junior, like keep in mind, I'm 52 years old. So I played junior when I was 16, 17, 18 type of thing. So, pre-cell phones, pre-anything, there was one plug-in on the bus. And we used to, like nutrition didn't exist back then. So, you're on a 7-hour bus ride and your pregame meal was like a place called Bonanza or Ponderosa. It was like these Salisbury steak. And so, I always felt like halfway through the second period, like the steak and the gravy would be like in my throat. So I started bringing a crock pot on the bus. We had one plug-in and I would make like just Kraft macaroni and cheese. Like that was it. And I would eat that. And it got for a while that other guys would stay on the bus with me, so I'd bring extra and we'd eat instead of those guys having heartburn too. So I kind of got the nickname Noodles, and it didn't. Like I thought, okay, you turn pro, it doesn't follow you, and it literally followed me. So whatever it is, 32 years later, 33 years later, people still call me Noodles, and it's not a sexy story. It's just the truth. I hated the pregame meals that we ate on the road in junior hockey, so I would make my own.
Is Kelly Chase the guy that gave it to you? Is that true?
No, I didn't play. I didn't play junior with Chaser. I feel like it was a guy named Kevin St. Jacques.
Okay.
So Jocko was the leading scorer. I think he won the scoring race the one year with the Hurricanes. But I feel like it was Kevin St. Jacques or somebody on the team that year. But Kelly Chase certainly helped my nickname to stay alive in the St. Louis days. Put it that way.
So he's the one that brought it from junior to pro.
Well, I think it just, there's just a lot of people that there's so much crossover. And as you guys know, in the NHL and in pro hockey and in the hockey circles, everybody knows each other, right? So it's just kind of the 6-degree separation. So that's pretty much, it followed me to the island. I feel like maybe it was Dean Chenault or somebody like that who, had played in Medicine Hat, but just people knew it and it stuck with me, put it that way.
Well, the pasta thing back then, that's carb loading, right? That's all before BioSteel and protein shakes and that stuff. I mean, you're just that is your pregame meal.
Honestly, it's true. Like that was my carb loading, was just like Kraft mac and cheese, and even if it was a short game. So say I was playing in Lethbridge and we were playing Medicine Hat, I would just bring like Kraft dinner in like one of those like Ziploc bags and just eat it then and whatever. But it's kind of funny because. Honestly, I wasn't, like I say, back then, nutrition wasn't very big. So it was like, yeah, we'll have some pasta before the game. Like nowadays, guys are so dialed in with nutrition and have their own personal chefs and the meals and the shakes are made and all of that. I used to think working out in junior is like, hey, I'm going to go for a 30-minute run, open the front door, run for 30 minutes, come back and I'm fine. I'm in shape. Nowadays, the guys are so dialed in as far as in tune with their body. So the game's just a lot different back then.
Well, we used to go to training camps to get in shape, right? Now they show up in shape for training camp. We actually have a bit of a Lethbridge connection, Hurricanes connection. I never played major junior, but I was a goaltender consultant for their training camp in 2006. So I was kind of a prevalent for the Lethbridge Hurricanes.
I love it, man.
You were in the 1991 draft in Buffalo. Did you go to your draft?
I did, because back then I can't remember how many rounds there were. It was like maybe 12 rounds or whatever. Yeah. But I was 19. I just turned 19, and I was eligible, or I was turning 19. I was eligible to go in all 12 rounds, and I was rated the number 2 goaltender in the draft. So I knew I was going to get drafted. I just didn't know who or where or all that fun stuff. And Buffalo was the Eric Lindros draft. And if you actually go back on the video and watch Eric Lindros get drafted, him stand up in the stands, I'm sitting right next to him, like kind of right above him and I became friends at the Memorial Cup that year. We were award winners and we were the only 2 players that were up for awards, but we weren't in the tournament. So him and I hung out the whole weekend. So when I got to the draft, he was like, yeah, come sit next to me. And I, back then you don't think, okay, all the cameras are going to be on that guy, especially when he doesn't put on the jersey and he doesn't want to go to Quebec. But it was really neat. And yeah, I went to Buffalo and, there was a lot of great memories out of it, including personal one where my brother was enjoyed the Buffalo Wild Wings a little too much. I think he went missing for a day or something, and he turned up a day later as he had gone up to Niagara Falls or something. So, anyways, we had a good time, or our family had a good time out in Buffalo in '91. It was.
So you said you were the number 1 ranked or number 2 ranked goaltender, but you were chosen first. But you were the first goaltender chosen though in the '91 draft.
No, if you go back, the Edmonton Oilers chose a guy named Andrew Werner in the second round.
Werner, that's right.
Yeah, Andrew Werner was taken, and then I was the second goaltender taken. But I don't know where Werner was ranked. There was actually a goaltender who was ranked number 1. His name was Mike Torchia from the Kitchener Rangers. Torchia ended up going to Dallas in the 4th round. I was taken second by the Islanders. And Chris Osgood went to Detroit, and a guy named Marcel Cousineau, I think, went to Boston, and then it was Torchia. So, but Werner, I don't know if Werner ever played an NHL game.
No, he did. He played exhibition game. He got an exhibition game, but you're right. He never played an NHL game.
Yeah, I remember being so sad because in the paper, back then it was like, the Edmonton Journal, I think Jim Matheson or somebody asked, Kevin Pendergrass was like, why didn't you take the local boy? And they were like, oh, we feel that Werner has more upside. So I was like, all right, fair enough. So either way.
Where's his upside now, hey, Jamie?
Well, I don't know. I think we have a few mutual friends, but yeah, I never played in the NHL, put it that way.
Were you aware then ahead of time about the possibility of the Eric Lindros saga? You and Eric were pretty good buddies, but did he kind of give you the heads up that he wouldn't be smacking on the jersey or any of that stuff?
Not really. I mean, yes and no, because I think what it was is it was kind of like well publicized. But I remember being in Quebec. The Memorial Cup was in Quebec City. Mm-hmm. So there was a lot of people that were like, hey, Eric, we want you to come here type of thing. But honestly, back then, I didn't know how big of a trailblazer he was, based on, his preference to not go there or however it was. I don't even remember like the whole backstory to it, but I didn't know much about it. To be honest, I was just a kid and you're all just trying to worry about your own situation. I had a lot of anxiety as to where was I going to go and who was I going to play for and all of that type of stuff. Was I going to get drafted and go back to junior as an overage, or was I going to turn pro as a 20-year-old or a 19, 20-year-old? So I was kind of more just caught up in my own little bubble.
So you go to Long Island and your first...
Good Lord, share the stage, Bob.
I paused for a minute. You didn't say a thing, so I told you I got lots on my phone. Okay, go ahead, Chad. Go ahead, Chad.
It's funny because you brought up the last question you asked him. You brought up Jim Matheson, which was awesome because my favorite article that I've ever read about Jamie is the one that Jim wrote last year about you. Everything you said was bang on. It's exactly how I feel, and I want to ask you some questions, some deep, hard questions.
All right,
so prepare yourself for this. You talked in that article. You brought up things that when you talked about Oilers goaltending back, when Mike and Koski were there and Stewart, about the issues that of Mike getting hurt and Koski having to come in and taking over that role, and it was unfair. How much of that do you attribute as not just a former NHL goaltender, but as an NHL coach, goalie coach, to the Edmonton goalie coach? In bringing Koski to the American game? Did they screw him by taking away what he was doing in Europe that made him so good? Or was it were they trying to help?
Well, I think, Koskinen, he was like 30, wasn't he 30 years old when he pretty much came back, his second or third time around, really, because I think he played 5 games for the Islanders when he was 23 or 24. And then, I don't know if it's messing with anybody. It's more about your adjustment to the game. NHL, and not even the NHL game, but the style, the size of the rink, everything. You can play in the KHL, and I believe Koskinen was a really good goalie in the KHL. Mm-hmm. But that's the second best league in the world, not the first. There's a lot of great minor league players that come up to the NHL, and you're like, okay, there's a reason why you play in the minors. So there were times where I watched Koskinen play where he looked like he was 6 foot, whatever he was, 7 or whatever, this monster in the net. And then there were times where I was like, God, that guy looks like he's 5'6", right. He just shrunk and played a smaller game. And that was more when he got motion in his game. There was all these holes. You could see the net, whereas just naturally, if the guy just butterflied, you barely, if he slowed his game down, you never saw much net. So I think it's more about just giving him the opportunity. But clearly, I felt that those guys, I don't know, getting screwed is the right word. It's more, they never were healthy together. So that's if you're not, I'll give you a prime example, and I'll just use myself, okay? I was given an opportunity to play short-term starter minutes here or there. When I played in St. Louis with Grant Fury, hurt his knee, I needed to play 10 games in a row. So I knew I could handle, 5 or 6 games in a row. I was always a starter in junior and everywhere else I played, but at the NHL level, I wasn't a starter. So if you're asking me to punch above my weight, some nights I'd be able to do it, but then eventually, the real, we'll call it Jamie McLennan, would surface. It's like, okay, I don't have it tonight. I'm not good enough to play 12 quality games in a row. I can give you 4, I can give you 5, and there might be a dud in there. So I'll come back to the Koskinen situation. When Mike Smith was hurt, it was him. And it's like, okay, you got to run this guy. I don't know. It's clear he wasn't an NHL starter. So you're asking somebody to punch above their weight and do it in a Canadian market with high expectations, you name it, all of these things. So that was the toughest part that I've always found with that tandem, is they were never healthy together. Because if you actually look, when they were both healthy and played together, I thought their numbers were decent because they neither one of them was overplaying. You could actually share the net, have a little rest, go back and reset, as opposed to playing every night. So that was my biggest struggle with that goaltending tandem back then with Smith and Koskinen, is neither one of them were, they shouldn't have been, if they were healthy, they should have been spaced out in their starts. And it was like, okay, we're going to run Smith a bunch of games, or we're going to run Koskinen a bunch of games, and then they would erode and it would look ugly.
So that's literally the best answer to that question I've asked for. So thank you for that. Now, my next question is this. So last year's playoffs, came to LA when Campbell comes in, saves the day by leaps and bounds. What do you do as a coach?
Oof.
You saw exactly what question. You saw what I saw. And when Jack saved the day, and I saw Skinner having some flaws, and not to knock Skinner because he played great all season. But you could tell he was a rookie. Jack came in and actually did a great job for them playoffs. Why did they not go to him?
Well,
in your
game
opinion?
6, even, like I think the biggest argument, like I put it this way, I think it was fine to go back to Skinner after the first pull, but not the second one. That's because
when he was letting
twice, right?
Yeah, when he let 2 underneath his skate, you mean?
Yeah, the right pad, the right.
He actually got pulled in a third of his starts in the playoffs, Jamie.
Right. That's what I mean.
And Jack let in 1 goal. Jack let 1 goal in.
There was a time. What's the game that they came back in? Was that what game number was that? Were they in LA? Wasn't that where?
I think that's game 4, and LA would have took a 3-1 series lead. I think that's
Jack. Basically, that's the reason why they won that series. Mm-hmm. Like I thought he was brilliant.
Yes.
But you know what I was getting mixed up on? Sorry, I was talking about the Vegas series where I think he should have started game 6. You're right. So here's what I was fine if you get pulled once and you get put back in, because as a competitor you're like, you know what, I want that net back. give it back to me. But when you're getting pulled multiple times, that's when you're starting to see, okay, maybe they've seen something. So I'll move away from the LA series because they got it done, okay? But I'm more going to talk about Vegas, where it's a scenario where you could tell it just wasn't working for Stewart. And that's where it's like, okay, he gets pulled. You can go to Jack. And if Jack gives you those types of minutes, go back to him and run with him. So that's where I know sometimes you get coaches that will die on a hill and go, okay, he's our guy no matter what. But I might be the only guy who would say this, but I expect things to be different this year. Because I expect Jack Campbell to have a bounce back here.
There's 2 of us that'll say that, I promise you. 3 of us,
so 3, 4. Okay. The reason
I'm a forward, Jamie. My opinion doesn't count.
Well, okay, but I'm going to lump you in. But here's why. I thought Ken Holland had a really interesting comment at his year-end presser, where he said, if you take a look at the history of players that have changed teams on contracts or whatever, he said, not all of them, hit the ground running. You can look at Kadri, you can look at Huberdeau, The only one who hit it out of the park was Matthew Tkachuk, because he was up for the Hart. He was brilliant in the playoffs. But everyone else who changed teams, there was a lot of them that struggled, including Jack Campbell. So what do I expect from Jack Campbell this year? A lot more comfortable in his environment, comfortable in his skin as a goaltender, knows what to expect, like knows the tendencies of the D in front of him. You know, it's kind of like your first run through. It's like, okay, been there, done that, a lot more comfortable in the city, everything. So I expect more of a goaltending battle this year than last year, where we all expected Jack to play 50, Stewart to play 30, and Stewart to kind of be groomed. It went the other way, where it's like, okay, Jack's, you know, we're winning games 5-4 and he's not playing well. And it's like, okay, we're going to bleed him into the lineup. And then down the stretch, I thought they played Stewart too much down the stretch too. There was a time where I think he played like 12 or 14 or something. I'm like, why so much when you're a team that's been an absolute juggernaut? You know, they ended up with 109 points, and they were the best team in the league statistically from like January on or whatever. So I felt like they could have just dialed Stewart back a little bit, even if he was going to be their guy. Give Jack some starts where it's like giving Stewart some real good quality time to work at his game. So, you know, it's very interesting. I'm looking at the comments here from Neil. Boston should have pulled Ullmark too. Montgomery won the Jack Adams and made the similar decision. It's a good point, but if you actually look, Boston, those guys alternated until the playoffs.
Right.
And then it was like, okay, we're going to run Ullmark. And I'm like, hold on a second here. You know, Swayman, when you lost game 5 where Ullmark gave the puck away, you could have gone to Swayman in game 6 and been fine with it. So, you know, it's a tough situation when it comes to goaltenders. There's only, 7 or 8 situations in the league where it's like, you know who's starting every night. Mm-hmm. Now you're down to, when you're in a tandem situation, it's a coin flip. Like, you're going, okay, who's going to play? Who's playing better for us right now? Who do you trust more? And there's an old saying, it's if you have 2 number 1 quarterbacks, you don't have a number 1, because you're always, you know, guessing. You should have played that guy, should have. And that's where I think you get to a situation. If you've got a tandem, there's always somebody going to go, I like that guy better than that guy. So the coach has to trust somebody. And it's easy in hindsight to go back. But at the end of the day, I think, especially in that Vegas series, when things were a little bit, you know, disjointed, I would have gone with Jack in that game 6, because I just didn't like what I was seeing from, you know, what was going on with Stewart, unfortunately. And I think he had some great growth, but, you know, I expect growth from him this year too, and a bounce back, you know, playoff as well. So I like both of those guys. I got
to ask you something a little more pointed on that, Jamie. If you were going to make that switch to Campbell, would you have done it earlier than game 6 though? Like, to me, that's really putting him in a pressure cooker situation. Yes. I guess that's why you pay him what you pay him, but would you make the switch earlier? Because I mean, Skinner got pulled 2 games in that series, right? Or 3?
Wasn't it game 2 he got pulled? Or game 1, wasn't it? I'm trying to remember which game he got pulled against Vegas. I think it was game 2.
Yeah, no, he was pulled 3 times in the playoffs, because we played 12 games, and I remember he was pulled in a third of his starts.
I would have gone to Campbell earlier, put it that way.
Yeah.
And that way it gives you an opportunity, because you can always go back too, right?
Yeah.
That's the thing. You were keeping Campbell kind of on an island.
Mm-hmm.
Well, which is you're kind of messing with both goalies' confidence at that point, right? I mean, Skinner is obviously not feeling all that confident because he's getting pulled all the time, and Campbell's playing lights out, but he's not getting a start. So both goalies kind of wondering where they sit at the moment.
So how much of that is actually, as a goalie coach, how much say does a goalie coach have to a head coach?
Well, I think you're a voice in the room, but you're not the voice. The coach always has the final say. The coach always has that. Like, if you hear a head coach go, well, the goalie coach is making that decision, they're lying. because every coach I've ever worked with and ever worked under, even with, great goalie coaches. I had Billy Smith, I had Dave Marcoux in Calgary. I've had some really good goalie coaches. And then being behind the curtain, you bring your opinion to the table, and then the coach takes it into advisement. But a lot of it is their hunch, their trust, I think when you look at it, Jay Woodcroft knows Stuart Skinner as much as anybody because he had him in the minors. So, there's a sense of like, okay, I know this guy, I know what he's capable of, especially when he was my starter down there as far as handling pressure. I'm gonna press him and see if he can respond. And unfortunately, Stuart didn't respond when it was needed, in those critical games against Vegas.
So
how much time?
Go ahead, Bob.
How much time as a goalie coach did you spend scouting the other team's goalies?
All the time, but you're also scouting the tendencies of players. And back then, there was a system, and there still is a system called RinkNet. So all the information gets pushed to it. So nowadays, if you see guys with iPads on the bench, that's a video coach pushing, all your latest shift. So I could go into the system and go, if I was playing today, I want to look at every goal I've given up. I want to look at every shot I've faced. I want to look at Connor McDavid's, every one of his shifts. I want to look at, the tendencies, every one of his shots, breakaways, like the amount of analytics that there are. There's, a company like SportLogic has like 3,500 data points per game. So you can dial into it. You can get really pretty deep into those rabbit holes. So, when I was a goalie coach in Calgary, a lot of times I'd have to go back into the game film, and I would write down time codes, and then I would have our video editor clip them, and then I would show it to Kipper or Vesatoskala or whoever I was working with, Curtis McElhenney, and say, I always pre-scouted their top scorers. I pre-scouted, and then we would all do the technical stuff on our own goaltender. So there's a lot of prep. And then there's times too, this is the crazy thing. It's almost like being a parent. You feel like, okay, you put in 3 hours of prep into like, hey, this is what I want this to look like. And, here's their power play. Here's their penalty kill. Here's their top players, their tendencies. And then you walk in to show that player, whether it's Kipasov or, whoever, Curtis McElhenney, and they're like, I don't want to see anything. I'm good today. I know that team inside out. And you're like, okay, as long as you're comfortable. But that's the thing. So there's other times where the goalie's like, I need to see everything. I want to see, the defenseman who has 8 shots on goal all season, hasn't scored. I want to see what he's up to. So the information is at your fingertips. It's how much the goaltender or the players too, because I used to pre-scout shootouts. So I would go and sit down with Jerome McGinley and go, okay, this is what this goaltender has been beat 3 times on this move. I'd show Alex Tanguay and the guys who we would probably choose in the shootout. I would show them tendencies of the other goaltender. This guy likes to cheat. He leans this way. He's a poke. Marc-Andre Fleury likes to poke check. So be aware of that. There's so many things. The amount of information on, the video now is insane and accessible to everybody.
So do you think Dustin Schwartz of the Edmonton Oilers has the same work ethic as you do?
I don't know him. I know Kevin Woodley, who runs In Goal magazine. He speaks very highly of Dustin Schwartz. I'm sure that he has every resource to him that I just named. I think here's the other thing I would say about goaltending coaches. A lot of it is we can all do the technical stuff, and especially these goalies are now really dialed into the technical stuff because they do it in the off season. A lot of it is about relationships and how you manage that player and how you manage them mentally, how physically, the preparation. I wouldn't say it's the easy stuff, but it's the stuff that it's a routine. Okay, the Oilers are playing Seattle. Okay, Matty Bernier's or whatever. What's he been up to? He's a left-handed shot. He likes to shoot from here, shoot bad angle. We'll do all these types of stuff, but then it's more about, okay, where's your positioning? How do you feel about this? keep in mind, like, if you're dealing with an athlete a month into the season, nobody is healthy. Like, you're only healthy one day of the season. That's training camp, and that's if you didn't get an injury in the off season. So you're always got something nagging. So you're also dealing with, the person and what they need that day. And okay, you need to prepare for the game, but you also need you don't need that many shots. You just need some technical stuff that day. I think that it's more about the relationships and what people need. So I don't know. Like, I don't know Dustin at all. I know Kevin Woodley speaks highly of him. He's been there with the organization a long time. So, I just, that's one relationship I really don't know when it comes to. I know a lot of other goaltender coaches throughout the league, so I can speak to them. But, it's sometimes, I don't know if you're going, it's like, hey, he's been there a long time, maybe change is in the air. But at the end of the day, if he's worked with Stuart Skinner had a pretty good season last year. It just kind of fell off at the end. We'll see what he does with Jack this year.
Well, yeah, but Jack at the end of the season went back to Emu and Ranford and all of a sudden started playing like Jack again. That's what I'm talking about. So why would he go back to his old coaches if he was looking for something to spark his fire?
Well, Dusty's a good friend of mine. Dusty was my junior partner, right?
Yeah.
Dusty's more the mental guru. He's very, very strong at the relationship aspect. So, maybe it's easy to point out, like, Jack had tremendous success in LA with Dusty and Billy. And, you go with people that you're comfortable with. Like, I know personally, Dave Marcoux was a great goalie coach in Calgary, who's a personal friend of mine still to this day. So, you get this comfort level, and maybe that, comes back to, it's more about relationships. Like, you've got to have trust in somebody that you're working with every day. And that first year, maybe there was some bumps, and it's like, okay, you got to get through it. So we'll see how it unfolds this second year, put it that way.
My sister's trying to anoint you the new Oilers goalie coach here.
They can't afford me.
Yeah. But, Jamie, my uncle used to say, like, a goalie coach, you can't turn a Pinto into a Ferrari. The thing I think that gets Oilers fans and Chad kind of dire up, though, is, Barry Stafford was an equipment manager in Edmonton forever, did a fabulous job, but they let him go. And it seems like Dustin Schwartz survives anything that comes his way. So
Ken
to
Lowe?
me, Ken Lowe, to me, the guy is either really good at his job or he's got blackmail material or something. Like, it just,
everyone has an expiration date. It seems like there has been some turnover, I guess at the highest level now, Jeff Jackson coming in. He might have a higher level, different look. Remind me, did Jay Woodcroft work with Dustin Schwartz in the minors at all? Did that coaching staff work with them? Like, do they have a long history? Like, there are some things where, maybe it's a fit, but you might just see that there's a change along the way. I don't know. The one thing
Dustin worked with Skinner for most of his career. I'll give him that. But Dustin spent most of his life in college golf, like in teaching in university and teaching that area. So his NHL, he's never played the NHL. He's never had experience in NHL. So, I mean, I'm not saying he's a bad guy. I'm never going to say that. I'm just saying he's not working for us right now. He hasn't worked for us for a long time. And it goes back to Koski. It goes back to Mike. And that article that Jim wrote, everything you say makes sense. Why are these guys not watching, like, realizing that the majority of our the goals are getting scored from the slot? You're 100% right. So who's not scouting this?
Well, you know what? It's funny. It's scouting. It's more, to me, it's more about execution. And you know what? You don't have to be an NHL player to be a good coach. And I'll tell you who one of the best goaltender coaches on this planet is? It's a guy named Mitch Korn. And I don't, if you Google him, Mitch I call him, he's the Yoda of goaltender coaches. He's a little guy, and there is 7 or 8 goaltender coaches in the NHL right now that all worked under him at some point. Now, he runs the New York Islanders program. He ran the Washington Capitals program for years. He got Braden Holtby a Vezina. Eventually, they won a Stanley Cup there, and he was linked to Barry Trotz. He went to the Islanders. Mitch Korn is elite, and he's created Mike Bales, Ben Vanderklok. There's I think 4 or 5 goalie coaches right now in the NHL that Mitch Korn helped produce. So, I look at, you're right. You feel like you do need to play a high level or have a high level understanding, or you need to be an out of the box thinker. Seattle Kraken's goaltender coach is a guy named Steve Briere. Steve Briere is a brilliant mind. Okay.
Oh yeah.
So Steve Briere was in Toronto for 7 years. If you take a look at his body work, so Steve had Jack, Steve had Freddie Anderson. He got them both in the All-Star game. And then, Toronto, after 7 years, decided to make a move. Okay. But, when I talked to Steve, I learned something every day, even though I played in the league and I understand the relationships and that. But this is a guy who's a student of the game, but he's also very technical. So, but he's also not shy to challenge the boundaries. So, coming back to it, it's not so much your resume of where you played, it's how you can apply the knowledge that you're learning over the years to it. So, when I can name you a lot of great goaltender coaches that weren't, NHL players or stars, including myself. I wasn't an NHL star. I knew what I played in the league and I had a good understanding of it. But it's more about, I think where you guys are headed is, if Dustin Schwartz hasn't had tremendous success with his goaltenders, maybe, is that what you're saying? It's more maybe look for somebody else type of thing to come in. And, I guess the question I would pose back to, 3 of you, even though 2 are only goaltenders, is now, does that mess with Stuart Skinner's mojo moving forward if that relationship has been there?
Well, the thing is, too, what gives Schwartz the advantage right now, too, is the fact that Skinner did get nominated for a Calder. And then, of course, Skinner gives him lots of credit for it. So that's going to be one of Schwartz's saving graces this year for sure. But you're right. Maybe that does affect the relationship between Skinner and Schwartz. I just know, as Oiler fans, I know Chad always speaks from the heart when it comes to Dustin Schwartz, and I respect that about him. It's just been frustrating, and not just watching our goalies as much as also the scouting of the other teams' goalies, especially the lesser known goalies. So, as a goalie coach, you having been a goalie coach, you have a huge lots to choose from sample size for the starting goalies. What about those guys that come up, like the 3rd stringers and the 4th stringers that come in? What kind of scouting report can you do on them? Where do you get access to that in order to find weaknesses or tendencies in their game?
Well, as I was saying before, these programs now, you can't hide. Like, there are parents right now that are watching their 8-year-old play soccer on, on their iPhones, because there's cameras out there, and you can sign up for a program once and pay $20 a month to watch your kid play hockey or watch your kid play soccer or baseball. There's a company out of Regina called Home Team. I know the venture capital group that invested in them, and they have 6 cameras that are HD, and they set up in like a rink, and you can dial in at 10 o'clock on a Tuesday night to watch whoever's playing there, that team. So point being is, there's no hiding. The pre-scout is out there. It's more about, I used to watch AHL games on my computer when I was the goalie coach in Calgary, because I would want to watch our Abbotsford goaltenders and see what they're doing. And so you get many levels of information that come to you, and then you get the scouts that are at the game. They give their opinion on it. So nowadays there's no hiding. So if I'm looking at the 3rd goaltender, chances are there was 119 goalies that played in the league last year. There's only supposed to be 64 technically. Yeah. So every team, other than the Edmonton Oilers, knock on wood there for them, because they were one of 8 teams that only had played 2 goaltenders. The Ottawa Senators had 7. Yeah, I think the Toronto Maple Leafs had like 6 go through. So if I want to scout Joseph Wall coming up from the Toronto Marlies, I can dial into the AHL. I can look at pre-scouts. I can look at game film. So I'm already prepared. If I know Dylan Ferguson played 1 game for the Ottawa Senators, he was in the East Coast League. If I could look up Dylan Ferguson's body of work, and I can pre-scout and look at a lot of tendencies that he has and says, you know what, he cheats and leans to his glove side and leaves the blocker, 12 inches above the ice or 14 inches above the ice inside the post. If you have a blind shot, shoot there. If I'm a guy who, you could figure out all the pre-scouts on guys because, again, you're coming at an angle with pro hockey. You can't hide nowadays. Like, everyone's got game film. Everybody's got something. It's more about digging into it and having that book on everybody.
Well, that adds to the frustration level then for us, for the Oilers, because like as dominant as we were offensively as a team, we struggled against backup or third stringer goaltenders. We've had 25 games against goalies that were at that time either a backup or further along the line, and we finished 3 games below 500 against them. So what are we missing there? And when it comes to studying those guys, if all that information is out there, what's being missed that we're not as effective against those guys as we are against like Jacob Markstrom or what have you?
Well, I'll give you an example. I'm trying to remember his name, and I'm just looking it up on my phone as we talk right now. There was a kid that made 50 saves with Anaheim in Edmonton that night. He got called up, and the Oilers did everything. The shots were like, I think, 50 to like 19 or 16 or something. Anaheim won like 4-3, something ridiculous. And I'm trying to remember this kid's name because I watched him at the AHL All-Star game this year. So he's Anaheim's, we'll call him third goaltender. He's like 21 years old. And he stole the game for Anaheim in Edmonton this year. And it was when Edmonton was going through a rough patch. But you can't, the pre-scout on that goalie, they were hitting him. Like, he was literally in the wrong position. At one point, I think he was facing the wrong way in the net, and Draisaitl hit him in the ass. Like, stuff like that, those are like, okay, you just got to throw your arms up and go, this kid just stole that game. And you're right, like, there's certain, like, shame on if you haven't done the research on who you're playing. Okay, yeah, so Rob just wrote Lucas Dostal. That's right, yeah. Dostal. The kid was in the AHL All-Star game. He looks like he has some ability. That night, he was ridiculous. It didn't matter if McDavid had 10 breakaways. For some reason that night, he was stopping them because McDavid would miss the net on 9 of them or hit the post or hit the crossbar. Like, there was some weird things. Because I watched every Oiler game last year where I always felt like if they lost to a team, it was a bad timely goal against, like, or a bad defensive, like that New Jersey game. I don't know if you guys remember that. They were up like 3-0 and then just pissed it away right near the end, or 3-1, where you're like, what the hell just happened? Because I think it was like 4 minutes left in the game and New Jersey just came back and won the game. And they had no business being in the game. The Oilers just shredded them. But it was like, okay, we took our foot off the gas and we couldn't get it back. And that was one thing that I always got frustrated with the Oilers, was the consistency of their structure. Because they would be fine when they were in control and they felt like, okay, we can handle the puck, we can get out of our zone cleanly. But the minute that they got pressed on and they were forced to play in their zone for extended periods of time, they get stretched out. That's when they get scored on. And it would be a bad turnover. It'd be a bad goal. It would be a swing by a top player. And you're like, okay, we just need more. And that's what Vegas exposed. You saw Vegas just chipped away at them. Structure, until Edmonton's like, okay, we're going to try and open this up and play. So that's, I look at it and I can say, well, yeah, the goaltending wasn't good enough. But I would also say their structure wasn't good enough consistently. They have structure, but they didn't play 60 minutes of structure.
Jamie, Jamie, before we let you go, because I know you got go put on a suit like Clark Kent and
Yeah.
get after it with TSN. But I got one more question, and then I'll get you out of here. What do you think of Connor McDavid putting up the bat signal and summoning everybody to come and start the captain skates 2 weeks ahead of the rest of the league? I wrote a little article about it because to me it's almost like Kobe Bryant with the Redeem team there, teaching them that you guys work hard, but you can work even harder, and all of that.
I loved it. You know what? The one thing that I've noticed, it's the maturation process of like a lot of the stars in the league. You can get all these trophies, you can get all the personal accolades. What rang out for me, it was a couple years ago. I don't know if you remember Nathan McKinnon's comments saying, "I've been in this league for 9 years and I haven't accomplished you know what." I don't know if we're allowed to swear, so I'm not going to swear.
You can swear.
Anyways, but he just said, "I haven't accomplished shit in this league." That's what he said. And not that the guy's a top tier player, one of the best on the planet, but he was like, "I've been in this league 9 years. I'm going to let you know how hard it is to win." It took Alex Ovechkin 13 years to win. And that guy's, the greatest goal scorer of all time. So, you look at it, and I think Connor and Leon especially have gotten to a point where it's like, hey, we've been in this league for a while now. We're right in our, in our prime. I think the manager's done a good job of trying to add to the, some of the depth of this group. It's time for some of these kids to step up and take some of the pressure off of us. There's a lot of things that need to go right. You need help. Obviously, Kane was banged up. Hyman was banged up. That doesn't help. But, it's all about this group, like playing with structure. And I like the fact that he said, you know what, that's all his message has been is I don't care about anything about winning right now. And I want everyone back here and focused. And we'll see how that goes, but it's pretty impressive, like very impressive to say what he's been doing as far as, the type of leadership he's showing. And so I hope it translates into the type of season he wants. Like, I don't know if he cares about getting 150 points as he cares about playing for a Stanley Cup. And I think that's what is important. I think Leon's the same way. So,
and I think Soupy is too.
Yeah. Well, you know what? It's good because they're going to need him. I'm telling you right now, I believe I said this, and I don't know how you guys feel, but there are, and this is a bad analogy, but there are 3 reclamation projects alone in Alberta, and 2 are in Calgary, Huberdeau and Markstrom. And the third one is in Edmonton, and it's Jack Campbell. Reclamation's the wrong word. Just bounce back season. Like, I'm looking for bounce back seasons, and I think Jack Campbell's poised to have one. And I hope he does because he's a good guy.
I'm so excited for Soupy to kick ass this year.
He's a good guy.
So we want to thank our special guest, Mr. Jamie McLennan, for joining us and sharing his stories, insights, and we didn't get much of his humor. I heard he's a good impressionist, but we'll save that for maybe down the road. I also want to thank the Emirate family in Spokane for being weird to Jamie and
they were
and him getting to Lethbridge so I could watch him play. Those days with you, Wes Walls, Corey Lyons, Kelly Enns, Brad Rubachuk, and Dusty Amu. Those were pretty special, and there's so much more. You guys were great. We appreciate
I got 2 quick fire questions quickly. Number 1, who's your goalie idol growing up?
Eddie Mio. And Eddie Mio was my guy. And then I met him and had some drinks with him in Phoenix one night when I was playing for St. Louis. It's pretty cool because that's Gretzky's guy, eh?
Yeah.
They're best friends. So Eddie Mio was my guy growing up. Him and Mike Liut. Yeah, they were my 2 goalies. And Fierzy all of a sudden. And Fierzy was my guy. Here's the craziest thing. I won the Dairy Queen shootout. When I was I've got the ring light here. Hold on. I won the Dairy Queen shootout when I was 12 years old and got my picture with Fierzy at the first playoff game. Andy Moog was playing, and years later, when I was 26 years old, I'm playing with Fierzy in St. Louis. So it's kind of weird. That was that's a surreal moment playing with one of the greatest of all time. I love Grant. He's the best.
Jamie, for our YouTube thumbnail, we use that picture, and then there's another one where you're standing with Grant and you're kind of dwarfing him in that one. So
yeah, I'm taller than Grant now.
I used them both.
That's
Number
awesome.
2, who was your favorite goalie partner that you played with?
Oh, you know what? I was lucky to play okay, Ron Hextall was my first NHL goalie partner, who was unbelievable because he taught me how to work hard. Like he was one of the hardest workers I've ever, and I still to this day respect him, and I've told him that. Hexy and I, every time I see him, we have good chats. Roman Turek was unbelievable. Like he was this giant, really funny man. Roberto Luongo, obviously Louis and I are so close. And Mika Kiprasov is a dear friend of mine. So I'm spoiled. And then I just mentioned the legend Grant Fear. Like I feel like Fierzy's on a different level because it's so surreal because he's like a god. So I don't even – there's times where I'm like, that guy's my friend, which I think is weird because it's like somebody I idolized. So I was lucky. So I would say there's like a 5 or 6 pack that I was fortunate enough to play with because those guys were so impactful in my life along the way.
Thanks so much, Jamie.
Thank you so much.
Hold on. I'm going to answer these questions. Are you an Oiler fan? You know what? I grew up a fan of all teams, but I had favorite players, Grant Fear, Eddie Neal, all that. So I never had a favorite team. I just always had favorite players. Rob says Wayne's 894 goals might have a say in that. You're right. Although I think Ovechkin might catch him, which is crazy. But I obviously love Wayne. Anything else? There's somebody in there who talked about St. Albert. I grew up in St. Albert. I lived on Butterfield. Yes, I grew up at 50 Butterfield. And my parents, when my dad passed away about 10 years ago, my mom sold the house. But obviously, still have a great connection to St. Albert. Some of my dear friends are still there, and I come back as much as possible. So
do you?
I miss. Oh yeah, I was there. A couple of weeks ago, I just popped in to see my mom. My mom lives at St. Albert still. I'll be out there in October for the outdoor game, just to do some stuff there. So awesome. I'm always in Alberta. I go to Calgary obviously because of my connection there, but I also go to Edmonton because I grew up there, and it's still one of my favorite places to go home. So it's awesome.
I'll need to corner you sometime then, because when I retired my goalie pads, I get NHL goalies to sign the pads, and that's kind of instead of just giving them the pads away. So I need to corner you sometime and get you to sign my pads. I got Fuhrer on there, Ken Dryden, Curtis Joseph, so it'd be cool.
That's pretty cool. Well, it's awesome. Well, thanks for having me, guys, and I'm going to run on to Sports Center here, but we'll chat soon.
Okay, thanks for doing this, Jamie. We appreciate it a lot.
All right, we'll chat soon. Take care. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, Jamie.
So we're going to stick around for a little bit and just kind of recap that. I mean, that was a lot.
No, hashtag fire Dustin Schwartz. That's the end result of that situation.
Jamie's great. I mean, he asked for 45 minutes, but then he extended that by another 10 for us. So that's awesome.
Yeah, no, that's good stuff. And I thought Chad, you and him had a good thing going there back and forth. That was a good little chat.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I love Jamie. Actually, my uncle Kurt told me that back in the day, he said I played a goal a lot like Jamie McLennan. It was pretty funny, actually.
I had so much I wanted to ask too. Like,
oh yeah, I know.
I about 2 weeks ago, I went to a preseason Junior A, the Storm here game, and young netminder, the guy's got a puck and he's kind of almost at the bottom of the circles, and the goalie still doesn't have a stick on the ice, and he's standing straight up. I'm like, when do you get ready?
I know it happens a lot now. I see that too here in minor hockey. There's a goalie I'm working with again this year, and I saw the other kid at the other end. He was doing the same thing because they stand straight up until they get into about the face-off circle, and then all of a sudden they go down to their crouch.
Yep.
Sometimes
they're just not quite.
You know what? Name Cardinal here on the chat.
Yeah, they're not quite in anymore, are they?
Okay, name Cardinal on the chat. Always good to hear from your name. The better Fort Hawks goalie. I'll tell you what. There's a name that you're not even mentioning. The best Fort Hawks goalie I ever played against or even saw was Dino Flat. He was amazing. I think he could have gone somewhere if he could have stayed away from some of the outside distractions.
So we'll probably stay on for like another 10 minutes or so. I know the Fantasy Hockey Hacks guys tonight are making their debut on Edmonton Sports Talk, so I don't really want to overlap that too much. But I think just another 10 minutes is cool. And I'm seeing now Rashog has got Matthias Ekholm. I don't know if that's on Got Your Back or what's going on there, but they're gonna talk to him, so people might want to check that out too. But
we could easily do a 4-hour show with Jamie McLennan. Are you kidding me? Well, he had lots of good together.
Oh yeah, fuck.
My sister's asking, as in Dean Flat? Yeah.
Yep.
My sister's up in Manning, so she might kind of know what's going on.
Love
there.
you, Lori. Miss you. Love you.
Home of the Manning Comets. I used to play against them all the time too, and I played in senior league for Fairview. So
she wanted me to ask Jamie out for her, but I think his wife and kids might have a problem with that, so I didn't broach the subject.
Lori,
and it was, it was real nice to do this podcast and have the best seat in the house for you two to ask him questions. But as a forward, I just sit back and enjoy it.
There's so many other things. Like I looked at some of the guys he played with. Like he played with Brett Hull, Pierre Turgeon. Like his first coach in NHL was Al Arbor. Like there's so many stories he could share about that. Or you could go on about. So.
I was going to get into it with him and ask him, who's the toughest shooter you faced and that kind of stuff. But
And what about in 2004? Like he was with the Flames. And he gets traded to the Rangers, and that's the year the Flames make to the final. He missed one of the finals run.
Yeah, well, saved the heartbreak of losing Game 7, I guess.
I guess so, yeah.
And then he comes back to the Flames and ends up as Kiprasov's goalie coach. That's hilarious. I love it.
Kiprasov's goalie coach.
I love it.
And he had.
You know what he coached Kiprasov on? Keeping him out of the pub.
Yep.
Well, Jamie took all the penalties for Kipper. He had 54 minutes of penalties. 34 of them were with the Calgary Flames.
Yeah. Although you have to admit, though, Kiprasov with the Flames, and I hate to say this because I'm an Oilers guy through, like, we got the tattoo, is that fucker was a workhorse. Like, he worked hard. He played games. He played many. Like what Jamie was talking about with the goalies today with the tandems and how you're hoping this guy plays 50 and this guy plays 30. Like Kiprasov played 82 and then went through the playoffs.
Yeah. That kind of stuff
was, I hated him that he was a Flame, but man, I liked watching him play.
Oh God, he was so good.
He was a good goalie.
So good.
There were so many Flames that
I hated Kiprasov because he was so good.
There were so many Flames that I liked, but they just wore the wrong jersey. I was a big Iginla fan, but I liked Nieuwendyk. They used to have this little water bug named Paul Ranheim. I was a big fan of him too. Like they've had so many good players there.
Al McInnes.
Jeez.
Theo.
Just wrong.
Good old Theo. Theo Fleury.
Iginla's the only Flame I ever really would not deny that I liked.
Yeah, Jerome. Well, he's an Edmonton boy though, born and raised.
Yeah, St. Albert again.
Yep. Born and raised, Edmonton boy. Love him. Jerome.
That was fun.
Yeah, no.
I love the fact that he's on board with us for the 2024 Jack Campbell Redemption Tour.
Yeah, you got a vote there.
That counts as 2 votes.
I think I have to do a favor to myself and get it forward here because all this goalie talk is.
Well, we had Robbie Shrimp on.
Yes, we did.
Yeah,
okay,
Robbie
so now we need a defenseman, I guess.
Chris Pronger, let's do it.
Oh yeah, Prong Donkey, Pronger and Noodles at the same time would be legendary.
Oh man, yeah, they played together too in St. Louis. They were together.
Yeah. And
yeah.
Pronger tells a story about eating a fucking shot and breaking his ankle because Jamie kick saved the shot out to Brett Hull, I think.
Good stuff, eh?
Yeah. Well, let's get Yeah, I wanted to reach out. It's hard now, but Jason Strudwick, it would be good to follow up after Noodles, and he's both. He's a forward and a defenseman.
Yeah, that's right.
Oh,
Okay, boys, I'm calling it a night.
yeah, I think that does it. Thanks everybody for watching, and we'll be back next week, probably Thursday, I would guess. But sometimes we get guests that are high profile, and we have to accommodate their schedules and not ours. Little mix up between me and Jamie on 9 Mountain and 9 Eastern. So we met in the middle and went at 8 o'clock. Worked good for Jamie, worked good for us, I guess. Thanks everybody for watching. Keep your sticks on the ice. Keep reaching for the stars. Go Oilers, go. And log on to heavyhockey.com for all your articles. And subscribe to 97 Octane Hockey on YouTube if you haven't already. Or you can also subscribe to the Heavy Hockey Network YouTube page. Thanks again, everybody. Good night.